Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Kuli English Podcast. It's me, your host, Chris. So in the last episode, I promised that in this episode, I would talk about the life of a podcast. So life of a podcast just means the process of making a podcast episode from beginning to end. And this is something that I'm really happy to talk about. And it's also really easy for me to talk about it because, I do this all the time. And I even have all my podcast stuff out here. So if I ever forget, I just kind of look at it and it can remind me. But before I talk about all that, I want to tell you a little bit about some recent news for me. But you might have noticed that I'm not standing and I'm actually sitting. Well, if you're listening to just the audio version, like on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, then you probably didn't notice. But if you're watching the YouTube version, which by the way has subtitles, the YouTube version has a video of me talking. It's nothing special. It's just my face while I'm talking. It's the exact same thing. But if you watch the YouTube version, then I'm sitting down and I'm on a chair. And that's because actually my foot hurts. So my foot, so one of my feet, my right foot, on the bottom. So the bottom of your foot, you can also call it the sole of your foot, the S-O-L-E. And for example, the sole of your shoe also means the bottom, the very, very bottom side. But the sole of my foot, I have this injury from a while ago. And I never had a doctor look at it, but it's actually a little bit painful. And then so I finally went to go to the doctor after 2 years. So basically 2 years ago, I heard it walking along a beach in Japan. And then I stepped on some shell stuff. I don't know if they were living or they were dead or something, but it was kind of sharp. And then it didn't really hurt that much, but I ended up getting it turned kind of white. Okay, so it bled a little bit. And then when it healed, by the way, I'm sorry if you don't like to hear about this, but you should be glad that you don't have this. But I stepped on some stuff and then my foot bled a tiny bit. And then when it healed, it didn't actually heal that well. And then so basically 2 years later, then I have this kind of problem where it is kind of okay, but it feels kind of weird. So basically I went to the doctor and the doctor's okay, so you got to come back every week for 3 months. So, once a week for 3 months and then maybe we'll heal it. So basically when I go to get my treatment, the treatment is when the doctor does stuff to me. She shoots this really cold thing into my foot and then it hurts, but it's supposed to be good for me. So I don't want to stand, at least not right now. But anyways, if you're listening to just the audio version, then of course, that doesn't really matter. You don't really have to care about it. So anyways, let's take a short little break and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about the life of a podcast. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I feel because I normally walk into the video to talk and stuff, but this time I'm kind of rolling my way in. I feel I'm if you know what the X-Men are, there's this one professor. He's this bald professor, and his name is Professor Xavier, Charles Xavier, and he's always going really slowly and dramatically into the movie screens. But I feel I'm that guy. But anyways, let's go ahead and talk about the life of a podcast. So before I even start recording any podcast stuff, I always have to have some kind of idea. And I think in the first probably 15 or 20 episodes or so, I had a really good sense of what to talk about. And by that, I mean every week, before I record, I already have thought about, I really want to make an episode about this, or I want to make an episode about that. And then I also have interesting, I guess, stories from college or childhood stories that I thought might be good for podcast episodes. So then in the beginning, probably the first 20 episodes or so, I basically would just talk about the stuff that I wanted to talk about. And then it was fine. And then actually, eventually, so now it's even past episode 40, a lot of the time I actually don't really know what I'm supposed to talk about. But again, the whole goal of the podcast is for me to just kind of talk about things in a kind of easy to understand way with my native English. And then so people can listen to this podcast while they do other things. For example, maybe they're washing the dishes, or maybe they're doing laundry, maybe they're doing other chores, or maybe they're just kind of relaxing on the couch and not really doing anything, but they want to like listen to English along the way. And so that's like the goal. So I'm trying to find stuff all the time to talk about. I just want anything that's kind of easy to understand, something that's a little bit interesting so that people can listen to it and think, oh, well, actually, it's a little bit interesting. Maybe English is fun. Like that's like the goal. In the past, I've talked about like stories, like the Three Little Pigs, and I've also talked about various things like, like I recently went on a trip to Okinawa or something like that. And then this time I'm talking about the life of a podcast. And then the very first stage is to come up with what to talk about. And then I have like notes. I usually have notes on my phone or maybe on the laptop, just small little notes to remind me about what to talk about so that I know like what I'm going to talk about next. Although sometimes, for example, like right now, I don't have any notes in front of me and I'm just kind of talking from the top of my head. Top of my head meaning I don't have any preparation. That's like a slang phrase, I guess. Now let me talk a little bit about like the technical parts. So the technical parts are, I'm going to just mention like certain things that I use. And if you don't understand all of this, it's really fine. I guess if you don't record a podcast, then it makes a lot of sense that you don't know anything about podcast equipment. So to record it, first of all, I use my phone. So I have an iPhone 16 Pro, and then I use it's like a tripod. So a tripod is like a little machine that I basically put the iPhone into, and then it stands up. So it's like standing up over there while I'm over here in this chair, and then it can film me. And then the iPhone, the iPhone 16, it has one little hole, like the charging hole, which is also a USB-C. So then I plug in like a microphone into that. And then that's this microphone. And this microphone is a Deity mic. Deity is the brand. Deity is actually kind of a fancy English word. It means like I guess like a god or like a divine being, something that's not really human. And then I also have like 2 filming lights as well. So I got these on Amazon a long time ago, and they're actually really nice because you can control like the color of the light, and I always set the color to be kind of bright. So it's not like candlelight color. It's not like a late at night yellow color. It's a very white light. So that's supposed to be better for filming. Well, that's what ChatGPT said. And then so basically I have the phone that like film me, and then I have the little microphone set up so that I can have like high quality audio, and then I have the lights set up so that you can kind of see me easier. And then, so what I do is I record this, and then while I record it, I try to think about like where can I have checkpoints. So checkpoints meaning like places where I can stop and take a break, because I guess a lot of the times I actually mess up in the recording and then I have to redo it. But if I record the whole thing and then I mess up near the end, then, that's really sad because I have to restart from the beginning. So what I try to do is I try to have like these little breaks every like 8 to 10 minutes or so. And those are the parts where I always say like, oh, let's take a short little music break. And then I like go off the screen and then I kind of do whatever I want. A lot of the times I don't do anything. I go off the screen and wait like 10 seconds and then I come back. But that just makes it so that if I mess up, then there's less that's lost. So like, if I'm talking for 5 minutes and then I say something weird and I'm like, oh crap, I messed up, then I have to remove like 5 minutes of work. I have to, start over. But if it's just like 2 minutes, then yeah, that's pretty good. But of course, what you really don't want to do is you don't want to record the whole thing for like 30 minutes. And then in the last minute, after like, 29 minutes, you messed up and then you sneezed or you said something that's like embarrassing or something. And then you have to erase all of that. So that's really sad. And I've done that before in my previous podcast, but with the new podcast, then I try to do a better job. So I do this in a way so that if I mess up, then it doesn't cost me that much time. Okay, so let me talk about the next little section here, and then we'll go ahead and take a break. But after I record it, then what I do is, number one, I stop recording. I hit stop on my phone, and then I transfer it to my laptop. And I used to do like video editing stuff in college a little bit, and so I used Final Cut Pro, and that's like the software that you use to edit videos. So when you edit videos, some people use like a CapCut or Adobe Premiere. For me, I use Final Cut Pro, and the Final Cut Pro is on a MacBook. So then I have like my MacBook over there. And then after this podcast is finished recording, then I'll like move it to the MacBook, and then I'll start the editing process. And I guess before I talk about the editing stuff, as always, let's take a short little music break here, and then we'll come back. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the video editing process. So for when I make a podcast, first of all, because I mess up a lot, like most of the final product, it's not actually continuous. Continuous meaning it's like actually the same footage. So for example, in that previous part, I just said, hey, let's take a music break. And then I went off the screen, and then I came back. And, like if I do it in one try and it's really good, then that's fine. Then it's actually continuous. But what happens often is I mess up, and then I go back out, and then I come back in, and I can restart from the checkpoint. And so what I do in the video editing software is I look for those checkpoints, and then I basically cut them out. So the ones that weren't good, like this is just kind of embarrassing to say, but it's true. So when I mess up, a lot of the times is I actually say into the mic, like, like I make some noise so that I know when I listen to it that, oh, this is like a bad one. And then if things go well, then what I do is I go off to the side, and then I clap. So then what happens is in the video editing software, you can kind of see the audio. So it has like these spikes. It has these like sharp peaks, these parts that are really high and really low. And those are the parts with me either going, which means like I messed up, or there's like the claps, which is like really, really sharp. And so that way I don't even have to listen to it. I just know that those are the parts that I should cut out. So then I cut it, and then I put it together. And then, in between, of course, we always have like the music stuff. So I have my own music those are my own like covers and my own like guitar playing and stuff like that. And then I have that, and then I put it in between the transitions. So, when I say, okay, let's take a short little music break, I go off, and then like it cuts to the next part. So it skips directly to the next recording where I had a successful recording, and then the music also plays. And so that's how the transitions work. And then I guess now let's talk about, after we finish editing. So in the life of a podcast, we talked about in the very beginning, you have to first have an idea of what to talk about. And then you talk about it, you try to record it. And then, of course, as part of anything, it's very easy to mess up. And when you mess up, you have to try again. But I don't mind it because I think it's kind of fun. And then after you have a good recording, then you put it into the video editing software. And then from the video editing software, you can kind of edit it. And so after the final editing is done, then, I should also mention, for all the audio, so number one, the raw audio, the raw meaning like before editing, the raw audio has to be really high quality. So I actually turn off the AC, I turn off the heater, I turn off like the air cleaner, everything's off. The humidifier, if you're watching the YouTube, you can see behind me, I have this little white machine here. It's a humidifier, which means that it like puts more water into the air because it's winter here in Japan and it's kind of dry. So I even turn that off because that makes noise. But I only do one audio editing thing in the whole podcast editing process, which is I put something called a limiter. So the limiter is something that I don't think I really need to explain it. Even native English speakers don't know what a limiter is. It's like a podcast thing. It's for editing audio so that let's go ahead and explain it. So really loud audio on a microphone, if you use a limiter, then it makes it so that it's not too loud. And then the parts that are too quiet, then it comes back up. So basically any noise that's already pretty loud, it doesn't change. And then noise that's really quiet, it brings it back up. So that's like a little audio fix for me. And I think it's because like probably my distance, like the distance between my mouth and the microphone, sometimes it kind of changes. So if I speak really close, then it gets really loud. And then if I speak further away, then it's a little bit softer. So then I use a limiter to try to close that gap. Close that gap, meaning to try to make them similar. And then, I export it. So exporting is, I just take the project and then I export it into like a file that I can upload to YouTube. And then I use that to upload to YouTube, but I also export another file, which is just the audio version, which I upload to a podcast hosting system. And I use Buzzsprout, although you don't have to use Buzzsprout. You can use really anything. And then once I put it on there, actually, it's a little bit much. Let's take a short little break and let me... and by short little break, I don't mean a music break. I mean, like, I'm going to tell you about something else. So let me tell you about another complaint. So I think in the US, when I was in the US, this is going to be completely unrelated to the podcast, but in the US, when I went to the dentist, they had this thing called sealants. This is completely unrelated to the process of making a podcast, but it's like a recent complaint thing that I have. So, at the dentist in the US, I had this thing called sealants, and then I didn't really know what sealants was, but I looked it up later. But it's basically something that you use to hide certain parts of your teeth, so that it's supposed to do a better job of not getting like a terrible bad cavity. And then in Japan, after I came to Japan, I never knew what sealants really was, but I went to a dentist in Japan, and then they were like, "Oh, you kind of have like a cavity, so you need to like put on like a crown." And then I've never put on a crown before, but I like believed the person, and then I put on the crown. And long story short, I had like a pretty bad experience because I went to this dentist who I think wasn't very good. And then that dentist, I think they kind of did a bad job. And it was actually really bad because I'm not going to mention who it was because I'm not trying to talk bad about them. I'm talking about my experience. But when I got the little implant, it kind of hurt a lot, and we had a lot of issues. And also, the person who was going to put it in, she had to give anesthesia. So anesthesia is a hard word, but it means like the numbing thing. So she puts a little needle into my mouth, and then after she puts that in, then the medicine kicks in, and then I don't feel anything. So she was going to give me like that needle, that medicine, but then she almost gave it to the wrong side. Like I have like my tooth thing that I'm supposed to like get fixed on my right side, and then she was about to do it on the left side, and then like she has her stuff, her fingers and like the needle thing inside my mouth, and then I was like, wait. I'm like saying wait, and she's like, what? And then I was like, no, it's on the other side. And then so I think like the normal thing to do in that case is probably like, oh, sorry, my bad, or maybe you'd apologize or something. But that dentist actually ended up just getting some other employee and like yelling at them and saying, hey, you can't mess this up. You understand? You can't mess this up. And so like she like was doing that in front of me, and I was thinking like, oh no, this is kind of awkward. And something that I really regret is I should have just left. I already paid money, but I think I should have just left and gone to like a different dentist. But because I already paid money, like I ended up like having that done. And this was like a long time ago. This was like a year ago. But in this whole year of having this like crown in my mouth, because it's not a very good crown, I have my regrets. So I wish that I didn't like get it there. I should have gone to like a place that's a better place. Like this one was a little bit cheaper. So this is one of my bigger regrets. So now let's take a short little break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about like some more podcast stuff. All right, so let's go ahead and make our way into this last section here. So let me go ahead and recap the stuff that I talked about. So in the process of making a podcast, you have to, number one, figure out what to talk about. And then number two, you have to kind of actually record it. And then after you record it, you can put it into the software to video edit it. And then I edit the video and then I export it. And then I have two things that I have. I have the YouTube file, which has like the video and the audio, and then it goes to YouTube. And then I also have just the audio. So no video, just the audio. And then that one goes into just the audio only podcast systems. For example, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and then there's also Amazon too. So now let me also talk about the image generation. So for all the YouTube videos, I always have like a thumbnail. And the thumbnail, I use like a mixture of ChatGPT and then some other stuff to make the thumbnail. And then for the thumbnail, then I basically take that and I kind of chop it into like a square for the podcast. And then I chop it into like a little bit of a rectangle, so a horizontal style for YouTube, because that's what YouTube asks for. And then the very last part is I add subtitles. So subtitles, I actually use like an AI tool to transcribe it. So what I do is in my podcast, I have remember I have like two things, right? I have like the video output and then there's the audio output. I take just the audio output and then I feed it into an AI tool and then it writes the subtitles for me. So the subtitles, it comes as just like normal text. And then I take that text and I have to listen to my own podcast myself. I always listen to every single episode myself at least once before actually uploading it. And then I double check all the subtitles just to make sure that it's correct. And the AI, sometimes it gets stuff wrong, especially when it comes to like mixing language stuff. So sometimes I try not to, but sometimes in the podcast, I do mention a little bit like Japanese words. And if I pronounce it like with like, as if I'm speaking Japanese, then the AI tool kind of doesn't really know that. And that's kind of annoying, but then I have to go and fix it. So that's pretty much it. And I guess just a little time estimate, but for all of that put together, I did try measuring myself many times. And it really depends. Like if someone were to ask me how much time does it take to make one podcast episode, which is a question that I get quite often, then my answer is probably somewhere between 3 hours and 7 hours. And so it takes like, in the best case, if everything goes really well, it takes about 3 hours. So that's like, I know exactly what I'm going to talk about. I don't need to think about it too much. And then the longest part is the recording. So I record, and then if I don't mess up that much, then that's great. And then of course, the editing part, it really depends as well. So one of the previous episodes, we had like this guess the accent game with Mare, and that one was like a really hard one to edit because I actually had to splice in the audio. So by splice in, you don't have to know what that means, but splice in, I have to like move the proper audio in, like the high quality audio file in, and then remove the old sound, and that's kind of like a lot of editing stuff, and so that one took a long time. And then some podcast episodes, probably like this one, is going to be pretty easy because there's no any like major editing things. I'm just kind of talking about stuff. And of course, I'm always very nervous when I'm editing it because I know that if it's really bad, then I can't upload it. And that's also happened before. So there's always a chance that I'm like editing the podcast and then I realize, actually this isn't good enough. This quality isn't very good. And then so what I do at that point is I just delete the whole thing and then I make a new episode. But, that's kind of part of the process. And so I guess, I guess that's like the life of a podcast. And life of a podcast, but I've also mixed in like two of my complaints. So I've got a complaint about like my foot hurts, and then like my teeth hurt. So I guess if there's anything to remember from after listening to this podcast, it's not that I want you to think, like the process of making a podcast is hard, because actually I think it's pretty easy once you get used to it. And if anyone's interested in trying to make a podcast, I don't think that many people actually want to make a podcast. I should mention that it doesn't really make much money. So if you want to make it, it's because you actually want to make it as like art, or you want to create something. But if anyone's interested in making a podcast or something, definitely feel free to just message me, and I'm happy to teach that for free. But I guess if there's one thing to remember from this podcast, is it's not that, making a podcast is hard or cool or something. It's, you got to take care of your foot and you got to take care of your teeth. I think those are probably more important than making a podcast. So I think I'll go ahead and do that. And this is actually my first time recording a podcast like after midnight. So I'm actually a little bit pretty tired. So I think maybe that's a good point to end this episode. And it's going to be a pretty short episode, but it's okay. I'll make a longer one next week. So I guess, as always, thank you so much for listening to Kuli English Podcast. And if you want to support me, you can subscribe or like or share the episode. And I guess other than that, we'll see you next Tuesday. Oh, and bye-bye, of course.